So what happens to your electric vehicle in the future if the battery, the main vehicle battery, becomes unusable or worn out and you can't get a replacement? It's an article that came out this week regarding General Motors and the GM Spark electric vehicle, which came out a few years ago, and it's just starting to get to where some of these batteries might be at the end of their lifespan, depending on how it's used. And we've talked in other videos about how electric vehicle batteries can run out even before high miles, depending upon if they're charged very severely or high temperature. And unlike a gasoline vehicle that has an engine, if the engine gets worn out, a qualified mechanic can remove an engine from a vehicle, a gasoline piston engine, rebuild it, put in new gaskets, new rings, new bearings, redo the cylinders, and anything that can go wrong with a gasoline vehicle other than a catastrophic engine block damage can be repaired. Even if the engine block is damaged on a gasoline vehicle, you can buy a new engine because these engines are used in other vehicles. The EV battery format is very often vehicle specific because the electric vehicle battery, the shape, format, form factor, are all built around the style of the vehicle, meaning that they're not interchangeable. You can't take a battery from one vehicle and put it in another because they're not standard. They're built to conform to the sheet metal and design of that electric vehicle. So, what happens if an electric vehicle body style isn't used anymore? Body styles change all the time, right? A Honda Accord every 3 or 4 years is a new style of vehicle. The engine in it might be the same and the parts might be interchangeable from one year to another because the engine doesn't really care what the vehicle looks like. An electric vehicle battery does care what the vehicle looks like because it has to fit into the very specific design of that vehicle. So here's the first example where an electric vehicle, allegedly, according to this article in The Verge, is saying that the Spark EV battery replacement is being canceled. According to the article, General Motors will no longer provide battery replacements for the all-electric version of the Spark, first released in 2013. So that's, like 10 years ago. The executive confirmed that the company is no longer going to supply that battery. GM's inventory of Spark EV battery packs has run out, and the company doesn't plan on making any more. Unlike gasoline vehicle engines that can be replaced, retooled, electric vehicle batteries have to be made by the manufacturer. There's no aftermarket company that's going to make a battery for a vehicle that fits only in one type of vehicle. There are companies that rebuild and refurbish gasoline piston engines because they can be rebuilt. Batteries, at this point, it's unknown if they can be rebuilt. The oldest model of the Spark is reaching 10 years old. Vehicle owners may find themselves without a working car if the battery pack fails. There's a warranty, 100,000 miles, but that warranty's already run out because it's 8 years. This is an underreported factor in electric vehicle ownership. The most important moving part, or not moving part, but the most important component of an electric vehicle is the main vehicle battery. Not the 12-volt charging battery, but the main vehicle battery. That's what drives everything. It's a custom part for each vehicle, for the most part. You can't pull one out of a Tesla and put it into a Toyota Prius or vice versa. You can't pull one out of a Prius and put it into a Spark. They're made for the vehicle. In fact, in most cases, they're not easily removed. They're kind of built into the vehicle. They're incorporated in the vehicle body and the chassis. In some vehicles, they're an integral component, structural component of the vehicle. So what happens if the battery fails and there are no replacements? As new electric vehicle designs are released into the marketplace, what happens to the battery production for the older ones? I don't know if anybody has thought about that. I don't know if the manufacturers have either thought about it, or if they have thought about it and said, well, that's just how it is. They're disposable. Think about your cell phones. 10 years ago, cell phones had replaceable batteries. You could take out the battery and put in a new one. Several years ago, when all the new models of mobile devices had fixed batteries that you can't take out, there was an outcry. Well, what are we going to do with the phones? And the batteries go dead and now we can't use it. Well, the answer is phones are now almost disposable. You get to the end of your life, you just get a new phone. You trade in the old one. What happens to the old one? They're really worth nothing in the marketplace. 3 or 4 year old phone, for the most part, you can't really sell it for much. $50, maybe $100. So what's going to happen with electric vehicles once that battery becomes unusable? Do you need a new car? Think about the fleet of cars on the road. Everybody watching this video knows somebody or has a vehicle that's 15, 20 years old. Look, a 20-year-old vehicle is 2012. I'm sorry, 2002. A 2002 vehicle, there's plenty of those on the road. Plenty of people driving one as a second vehicle, maybe their primary car. If electric vehicle batteries are going to become unavailable, are there going to be a such thing as a 20-year-old electric vehicle? Let's say it's 2050 year in the future. Are there going to be any 2030 vehicles still on the road, or do you have to get a new car every 4 or 5 or 6 years? And how is that going to affect the motoring public? This is an important subject. Maybe there'll be companies that refurbish batteries. Maybe there'll be companies that give you credit for the raw materials in your battery when you trade your car in or sell it. Maybe the electric vehicle companies aren't going to sell vehicles to own anymore. Maybe they'll all be on subscription. So you just pay a monthly fee and drive it for 4 years and then switch it for another one. Kind of like cell phones. Maybe that's where we're going. But think about that and ask the questions as you're considering electric vehicles. Put your questions in the comments so we know what you're thinking and we can have a conversation about this subject. And see what you think about the electric vehicle battery replacement as a very serious factor that most people don't think about. You think about a regular car that you drive, and if it has 150,000 miles, it still runs, but maybe it's worn out. Somebody's going to buy it and maybe fix it up. Maybe a mechanic rebuilds the engine, puts on new brakes, rebuilds a transmission. And the car has another 10 years life. There's some cars on the road that are 30 years old. 30-year-old is a 1992. There's 1990 vehicles still driving. Maybe not a lot, but a 30-year-old electric vehicle, I don't know if that's ever going to exist in the used car marketplace.